Amedori.
Okay, oh boy, it's been a while since I had a microphone in my hands. My name is Carmen Amedori, and I am a Republican. I've been a Republican since I've been 18 years old. I'm 58. I'm also an American, and I'm a patriot. I'm going to pass around one of my brochures. It's the only one I have, from when I ran in 1998. And if you can just pass that around, I think you'll see that then I was a friend of the citizen. I have been told that I was a Tea Party before there was a Tea Party. And maybe I was. I look back on that brochure and I think, well, maybe I was. But I do know one thing. My principles, my values, my convictions have not changed. You can compare that to my new little piece of literature that I have going on. I lived in Carroll County 34 years. This is my daughter, Nicole. She's 34 years old. My youngest daughter is 31. She lives in New York. I was on the Maryland Parole Commission for 5.5 years when Bob Ehrlich found it in his wisdom. It seems like when I look back on that, he picked all the conservatives out of the General Assembly and he put them on different agencies within his administration. I look back at that and I think, was there a motive to that madness? Because right now, the Republicans in the General Assembly are just a big hodgepodge. I was in Ocean City for 2 years with my dad when I left the Maryland Parole Commission in 2010. I did not get reappointed by Martin O'Malley. Big surprise there. I'm sure that's because when I was in the General Assembly, I was tough as nails, and I'm still tough as nails. So you can have somebody with a backbone, you can have somebody who's playing footsies with the other side under the tables, behind the doors. When I went down to Ocean City to be with my dad for those 2 years, and I've always kept my house here, my daughters lived in my house. He wakes up one day and he says, "You have to go home." I was like, "What are you talking about?" "I am home." "No, you have to go back to Carroll County." Well, in the process of being down in Ocean City with Dad, I had some people up here trying to get me to run again. And I was saying, no, you know, I'm with my dad, I have a nice real estate business, I'm a licensed realtor. Sure enough, I came back to Carroll County. My dad said I had to come back to Carroll County, I had to come back to Westminster. Put my license over in Towson, got on Facebook, let everybody know that I was a realtor, I was licensed. If you had any real estate needs, let me know, and I'm telling you, from that point on, my phone rang, my door was knocked down, emails, Facebook, please do this, you've got to run. And I prayed on it. And I'll tell you, one of the things, probably the biggest thing that made me realize that yes, this is something that I would like to do and something that I should do, is the Carroll County House delegation vote for Obamacare. I was shocked. I could not believe that every one of your delegates voted for Obamacare, and I had that vote. Pass this around. There may not be enough for everyone, so you can share it. That's the vote on House Bill 166 in 2011. House Bill 166 in 2011 was the floodgate enabling legislation for Obamacare. Now, if you look at that vote, you will see all 4 of your delegates voted for it. They can give you any kind of excuse they want. Well, in committee they were kind to us and they let us put amendments on, and so it really wouldn't have been right if we didn't vote it out of committee. I'm sorry. Don't even try to amend such communist attacks on the American people. Just say no. America, people, we've got to learn to say no. What happened on that vote, you can see the few Republicans who voted against it. They're the ones that understood what that was. When I looked at that vote and I looked at that bill, I heard my father saying, "You got to go home." I had people asking me to run, and I prayed and I prayed. I said, okay, yeah, I think it's time that we do have somebody with backbone in Annapolis once again. Not only would I not vote for Obamacare, but I am a warrior, and I will stand up for everybody's rights. I'm asking that you find me worthy enough to go back to Annapolis to be more than just a vote, but I want to be your voice. I want to be able to go down there, and I want to be able to, you know, take your ideas, your principles, our values, uphold the Constitution, and make sure that we put a stop to these communist efforts that are coming down. Now, years ago, when I was running for the United States Senate, some of you may remember me coming in here and talking to you. And I mentioned that communism was at our doorstep. And some of you looked at me and went, well, maybe. And some of you said yes. And some of you said, oh my God, she said the C word. Well, here it is again. And it's 4 years later, and communism is at our doorstep. And not only that, we have a dictator in the White House. In our White House, there is a dictator. And if we don't start saying the C word, and we don't start saying the D word, it's going to encroach, and it's going to get deeper. The train is coming. And it's up to us, it's up to you, it's up to we the people to make sure that it stops. Now, some people said to me, well, how do you feel on firearms? And I said to Michelle, I said, well, I'd like to be able to carry this, if I could, but I can't. So I have to pretend. I have to pretend that I have a holster on my hip. But that's who I am. I've always defended the Second Amendment. I've always defended the Constitution. When they wanted to pass or adopt the Patriot Act, I fought against that tooth and nail, and I voted no. And ironically, it was me and a Democratic delegate named Sharon Grossfeld. We were the only two that voted against it. And you know why? Because even though she's a Democrat, she gets it. She got that the NSA that doesn't exist and the IRS want to see everything that you're doing. And guess what? They are. I talked about cameras everywhere, all the time. I'd be in Annapolis and I'd say to my fellow colleagues, man, there's cameras everywhere. Can't stand them, they're everywhere. I had a phone call from a fellow delegate who's in the House right now, and he said to me, Carmen, he said, you talked about those cameras, and you said they are coming and they are here, and you don't like them. He said, and I used to sit there and think, oh man, that woman, she's just a little wacky. He said, but you were right. He said, you were right, the cameras are here. It's nothing but a grab. It's a grab of your time, it's a grab of your space, it's a grab of your guns, it's a grab of your money. What else are they going to grab? I'll tell you what's next. They're going to grab the blinds off your windows. They've already got legislation in for cordless blinds. Well, where do you think that's going to lead? Where's that slippery slope going?
In the bathroom bill.
The bathroom bill. Oh yeah. That's right. Everybody's familiar with that? It's one size fits all for the bathroom, ladies and gents. You know? I mean, if we're not encouraging child molestation and pedophilia with that, I don't know what it is. As a court commissioner, I was a district court commissioner. I was also a journalist. Let me make that straight. I was a journalist with the Baltimore Sun and with the Carroll County Times for a number of years before I got involved in politics. And I was also a district court commissioner. As a parole commissioner, I traveled around the state from Western Maryland to the Eastern Shore to Baltimore City and every filthy, dirty prison in between. I was subjected to pat-downs. Sometimes correctional officers would feel me up. I actually turned around and smacked one on her hand. And I told her, I said, don't you ever touch me like that again. But you know what? Nothing gave me more pleasure than to sit with the felon that used a gun in the commission of a crime and look them eyeball to eyeball and say, you're denied. And you know why? Because you used a gun in your crime. And it's your fault that we, the law-abiding, tax-paying citizens, cannot have guns. It's your fault that all these restrictions are put on my Second Amendment. The answer is no. With all the gun owners in mind, that made my day. I'm very honored to be here today. I could tell you a million stories. I feel like I feel like sometimes I'm not worthy enough to be on your radar, but I pray that I am, because I still have the fight in me, and I believe that it's supposed to be this way right now. So I'll take questions if you have them.
Anybody got any of the questions down on your yellow pieces of paper? If not, we can do a quick Q&A.
Oh, I just have one other thing. This is a letter. Hello. Or maybe not. Hold on a moment. Oh, yes. This is a letter, and everybody gets to see it except candidate Josh Stanko. I'm kidding, of course. I love Josh. This is a letter that I just wanted to see briefly. So I'm handing out to some firearm people to remind them of where I was on that Second Amendment fight for them. Senator Nancy Jacobs, who's retiring after 22 years, she and I were a tag team many times on many issues, me in the House, her in the Senate. I'm pro-life without exception. She has endorsed me for that, and I'm hoping and praying that I'll be able to pick up the sword once again and help you all do battle. Help us do battle. Help us save Maryland and America for my daughter, your sons, and your grandchildren. Because if we don't do it now, it's not going to happen. It has to be stopped.
Does anybody have any questions for Carmen? Carmen, do you have, did you hand out some paperwork with your website address and all that good stuff on it?
I don't have a website, but you can get me on Facebook at Amedori for Delegate.
Amedori for Delegate at Facebook.
Right.
All right. Thank you, Carmen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Our second candidate up for this evening, although the clerk of the court is a non-contested race, Dawn does not have an opponent in any way, shape, or form. However, Dawn's not the type of person that takes anything for granted. He understands what public service means, and I've dropped in on him once in a while, and it's nice to see him and how everybody in his office seem to have smiles on their faces and don't act like they're upset when a customer walks through the front door. I get a chance to go through different offices in my line of work, or government offices in my line of work, and very seldom are you greeted with a smile on your face. I've known Dawn for about, what, 7, 8 years, maybe a little longer than that, and Dawn's a stand-up guy. And the fact that he's here tonight, even though he does not have an opponent, his belief is that everybody should understand what he's doing, and he does not take anything for granted. It's my honor and pleasure to introduce Dawn Sealing, candidate for Clerk of Court.
I can use a microphone if you'd like, but seldom do I ever need that, so let's try it without it. First, see where we go.
the guys behind it, they have some hard hearing in the back. That's why we know.
That's right. My voice carries really well. So if you can't hear me, raise your hand. If you can't see me, don't worry about it, okay? My name's Don Sealing. I'm the current clerk of the circuit court here in Carroll County. The pamphlet that I passed out to you is a little bit of information about the court system. Let me tell you very quickly about myself. I am a resident of Carroll County, have been a resident of Carroll County for 35 years. The reason why I came to Carroll County, I was born and raised in Howard County. When it came time to buy a house, I couldn't buy a house in Howard County, it's too darn expensive. I moved to Carroll County, been here ever since. Love this place. I live in Sykesville. I married for coming up on 36 years. By the way, this lapel pin that I have here, if anyone takes a close look at it, this is recognition of my years of service with the state of Maryland Judiciary. This pin covers 40 years of service. I got this pin 2 years ago, so you do the math, I've got 42 years of service here. As your elected clerk of the circuit court, I am in my 7th year. I am the best 3-syllable word in the English language is unopposed. That's what I am this year. So, I don't have to buy your votes. I would love your vote, but be that as it may. The pamphlet that I gave out gives some information on the court system. I'll tell you, the very first time I ever had anything to do with the court system, I was 16 years old. I got my driver's license. I was so proud. My mom and dad and I, we drove back to the house, and I said, "Mom, can I please take the car out? Can I please take the car out?" She said, "Okay, you can take the car out." I get out on the road, I stop at a stoplight, light turns green, I make a left-hand turn in front of somebody else, police officer's right behind me. The day I got my license, he pulls me over. That's pretty bad. While he's writing the ticket, guess who drives the other direction? Mom and Dad. No hiding that one. So that was my very first brush with the court system. Fortunately, I've had no other brushes with the court system since then, so I'm very pleased with that. A lot of people think of the court system as we try criminals, we try cases, we do a lot of stuff as far as court is concerned. My office does a lot more than that. My office, we process, you own a house in Carroll County, I've got your deed. You have a mortgage on it, I've got your mortgage recorded there. You ever need a copy of it, come on in and see me, I'd be happy to do it. Those of you who are not married, I can give you a marriage license. Those of you who are married, don't want to be married anymore, I can get you divorced, I can take care of that. If you have business owners, if you own a business, the likelihood is you need a business license. Where do you get the business license? You get it from me. So my office does a lot of things for Carroll County. I have 32 employees that work with me. My employees do not work for me. I am a working clerk. I do not sit back in my office and read Carroll County Times or Baltimore Sun or anything else. I file papers, I file files, I issue licenses. I do everything that I expect my employees to do. I am very, very appreciative of the office that I have. You know, it's kind of hard for me to follow what Carmen has said. She is good at what she does, but I love my job. I love what I do. I really enjoy it. I am very, very honored that I have no one running against me. So you will have me for another 4 years. I'll tell you, I was talking with Michelle when I came in here, and we were talking about public service. The very first job that I had was the original public service. And if you remember the gas stations, when you pulled up to the gas pump and some jockey ran outside and cleaned your windshield and pumped your gas, that was me. That was the very first job that I ever had. And I worked there until I started in the court system. So public service is something I believe I know a little bit about, and I'm very proud to serve the citizens of Carroll County. I thank you very much.
Does anybody have any questions for Don? All right.
Anybody want a divorce? Okay. Good answer.
We don't want divorce. I think it's great that when you start hearing 30, 40 some years old as far as marriages are concerned. That's pretty cool. I'm happy. I'm working on 17 this year. I think that's pretty cool. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. All right. Mr. Holbert, I don't know much about you, so I can't give you much of an introduction, and I do apologize for that.
That's okay.
However, Mr. Holbert is running for Commissioner, District 3, and who all is running in District 3?
Well, there's actually 5 different people on the Republican side running for the district, and then there's one woman.
Oh, that's right, we said, okay,
so
she wrote the one.
It's kind of hard for me to list off all those names,
Okay.
but, yeah, there's
District
a lot of
3.
competition. Yeah.
Okay, let's give it up for Mr. Holbert.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you all for setting up this occasion to be able to speak in front of an audience. One of the things that I'd like to be able to do in the future is to be a public speaker, so appreciate it. I'm 25, so obviously I don't exactly have the prestigious acumen or the kind of time that's needed to be able to develop all of the necessary skills for public office, but I have devoted pretty decent amount of time to educating myself. I would consider myself to be a Jeffersonian Republican, which means that I believe in classically liberal principles, primarily having to do with natural rights and natural law. And that basically just means that I believe that we're all entitled to our natural rights, which include life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. I don't think that there should ever be any kind of situation where anyone's rights should be infringed upon. I do not believe that guns should ever be in any way, shape, or form limited in terms of your ownership or your ability to purchase one. One of my biggest issues is actually education. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with this, but in Carroll County is actually the first county in the country to have implemented in the school lines the palm scanners, which this is something that I think obviously is a very interesting issue. I don't know how kind of familiar you are with the education system, but this is something that I've devoted a relatively decent amount of time studying, along with a few other things in that category. But education has been socialized over the past 150 years. This is a very important issue that has to be recognized, and exactly how this has been done and why it's being done. This is an issue for me particularly. I actually spoke with two gentlemen of the board in Westminster about this issue, just about education in general. I'm kind of curious. So they basically told me that well, a few things. One, that they did this primarily for the issue of kind of the ease of money. They just wanted to be able to get the money from the lunch lines much more quickly, which was kind of silly because they ended up implementing a touchpad system afterwards. And one of the other issues about this was that it was an opt-out, which means that the parents had to have already known about it and then decided not to be a part of it, which is kind of a different thing from opt-in, which means that basically they had to have known about it and then decided that they wanted to be a part of it. Of course, why would they have it as an opt-out? Because nobody wanted to be a part of it in the first place. Nobody in their right mind would want such Orwellian things being done in their area. This is a very strange and interesting thing, particularly in Carroll County. And I'm not sure if you are all familiar with how many NSA agents and other government officials are local to Carroll County, but that's also something that kind of struck me as odd. And so the entire kind of picture that I've gotten is basically that the education system has been socialized. And by that I mean they teach sex education, and they at a young age, about elementary school age, which has the same effect that death education is. I'm not sure if you're all familiar with that concept as well. But death education has a similar effect, which is that children commit suicide at a higher rate when they have death education. And so, same effect from sex education. Children are more likely to have sex at a younger age. Why would we continue this practice? if it shows the exact opposite of what we intend? Why would we have a socializing education when it has the exact opposite effect? In essence, we don't have a society, we don't have a culture. We have the exact opposite of a renaissance today than what we ought to have. I mean, it's the 21st century. How did we get here? How did we get here? This is what I have been studying. And this is what I have been very active in coming to the understanding of. Now, I'm not a politician, mind you. I am not a politician. I do not care about money. I do not have any interest in power. I am a philosopher, and that is the most important distinction to make in terms of my outlook and my decision making. Is that I am not interested in the things that usual politicians and usual power seekers are interested in. I am interested in your benefit, in your betterment, okay? One of the best ways to do this is through agriculture, and I believe that that is one of the most important things that we can do in the coming years, is to get involved heavily in agriculture, not just in this demographic, but in every demographic that we can possibly influence, my generation and yours. And I think that a huge obligation that forgive me for saying, that your generation has, is to teach my generation about agriculture and about the importance of community through agriculture, and of course education. My three primary tenets are education, ethics, and economy. And by that I mean economy in the sense of conservation and thrift of resources, not whatever kind of lofty-headed ideas that are used in economy today. And so this is the general outlook that I have, and I welcome questions or concerns about that.
Where are you running?
Westminster.
District 3.
District 3, yeah. Commissioner, yes. Sure.
How do you stand on the nullification of the gun law?
I don't like any kind of restriction of gun rights whatsoever. I am a constitutionalist. Basically, if you were to, you know, I've studied the founders. They're my best friends, if you will.
Would you support nullification?
No, I would not support nullification in terms. I would not. In terms.
Nullification that we will not apply that law in this county.
And what does that law imply?
That means we do not enforce the law passed by the state regarding the seizure of firearms, the use of firearms.
I would not support that, though. I would not support that whatsoever. Sure.
Yeah, what he's saying, that we have, the county passed a resolution that this Carroll County is a sanctuary county for gun owners. And basically what we're saying is that we have nullified SB 281.
Okay, so I would support the nullification then.
Yes,
Okay, yes,
okay.
yes.
I don't think he understood.
I didn't understand the question, yes. That's kind of like a double negative.
Yeah.
That's, okay, sir, yeah.
You're addressing a crowd that's quite a bit older than you are.
Sure.
How are you going to get your message to people your age?
I mean, it's not terribly difficult, I don't think, to communicate to my own generation. Although I understand what you're talking about, I understand what you mean. My generation, I understand, is kind of, you know, but yes. Flashy objects and the television. I actually will be using the Carroll Media Center as a tool to do political skits. So, any other questions?
Anybody else? Any more questions? Full beans.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
I'll tell you what, it takes a lot of guts for someone like Matt's age and Josh's age to get up and run. Because the first thing they're going to hear is, you don't have enough life experiences for you to know how to govern me. You're not even dry behind your blessed ears and you're going to try to govern me. That's not fair to these kids. We can't ask them to participate and then poo-poo them every time they get in. And I apologize for calling you a kid. It's not, I'm 51 years old, I can call you a kid. So you're about the same age as my children. No, about way. Okay, my boo-boo on the next candidate here. I completely forgot that we had the conversation, and that right now is not difficult because my work schedule is starting to pick up, and helping out where we are with the different campaigns and everything. I do tend to let a few things slip through the cracks. However, Mr. Kasten and I met, I want to say 6-7 years ago, when Dean Minnick and Julia Gouge had that dumb-ass idea to put a county-wide police force in Carroll County. And we said no. No, we're not going to let that happen. I worked alongside Phil and Sheriff Trigoni and the Sheriff's Association to push back on the commissioners, bringing in more and more of the state troopers and kicking our sheriff to the curb more and more. As we know, the Sheriff's Department is the only constitutionally recognized law enforcement agency in this land, and it's unreal to have a Sheriff's Department and them not be in the lead. Phil has been one of the ones that have fought along with us to get that across, and I am honored and pleased to have you here with us tonight. Phil Kasten.
Good evening, and thank you very much for this opportunity to be here with you tonight. Who knows what ghost haunted King George III? Anyone want to take a guess? It's the spirit of '76, and it was 2008 when I met Michelle. Before We the People, I do see one or two familiar faces in here that I do remember. And I think that there's a couple of former commissioners that are haunted by the ghost of 2008. And that was a group of people that said, no, we don't want a county police department. We want to be represented by our sheriff. And we had a new board, and I was proud to stand with everyone, not only here in Carroll County in challenging that police department, but also going to Annapolis. Michelle and I both testified in some hearings there. We were fortunate to have the support of our delegation, and this board supported us. It was their first act, and I think that each of the members of the Board of Commissioners will tell you it's the first and one of the only things that was a unanimous decision for them. Now, I'm very proud to say that over the course of that transition, we've had great success. Who am I? I'm currently the Chief Deputy in the Sheriff's Office. I'm a local law enforcement officer, and I was here in 2008 when that happened. I've worked professionally here over 2 decades. I have time as a United States Marine, a security supervisor at Oriole Park and Camden Yards, before I started in law enforcement here in Carroll County. I served with the Hampstead Police Department and left to join Ken Trigoni in May of 2000 when he was preparing to take the Sheriff's Office as a full-service 24-hour law enforcement agency. I started over at the bottom after serving as a sergeant, a patrol supervisor in Hampstead, and I worked my way up through the ranks to where I now serve as Chief Deputy. I oversee almost 260 employees and 2 operating budgets that total nearly $17 million. I think that's the right experience to be the next sheriff in Carroll County. For those of you that know, Ken has decided to retire after 51 years of public service, and that includes what will be 16 years as your sheriff. I'm proud of my time with Ken. We've accomplished an awful lot. Over the course of the transition, we have decreased crime. Our preliminary statistics for this past year show about 12% over the course of that 3-year transition, serious crime. We have the lowest serious crime rate in 2013 since 1985. That's pretty significant. At the same time, we've been able to return operating expenses to the tune of about $2 million. Depending on the budget director, what day you get him, sometimes it's 3.4, 3.2, 2.7. But I'm very comfortable to say that we've returned over $2 million in operating expenses to the Board of Commissioners. each year of that, saving over $6 million in your tax money and returning that to you over the course of that transition. And something as your sheriff that I look forward to continuing as we move forward. I'm a lifelong Republican. I believe very strongly in your Second Amendment rights. I encourage you to take the opportunity to look at my website that's on the business card that I handed out. I do not support what was the Maryland Firearms Safety Act. I do believe in nullification. Law enforcement officers have been doing it for years. It's no great formula. And the easiest way to tell you about this is when was the last time you got a ticket? Or you got pulled over for a traffic stop and didn't get a ticket but got a warning? Police have discretion. They do it all the time. The important thing is that you have a law enforcement agency and a law enforcement leader that leads that agency consistent with your values, teaches, trains, and leads their employees, and ensures that laws are enforced in the manner that you wish. They have a buzzword for that, and they call it community-oriented policing. My aim as sheriff is to continue the transition that Ken and I have started together, the great people in our office, and taking those final steps toward becoming a community and problem-focused law enforcement agency. Instead of what we've done for almost 40 years in Carroll County of just throwing our resources randomly, which is the contract policing model that we've lived under, we're going to focus on criminals, not law-abiding citizens, criminal aliens, and people and places that are causing problems, places where people are getting hurt, stretches of roadway and intersections where we're having accidents, not just a fishing hole. That will be my mission as your sheriff. We'll continue that progression, sharing information and engaging our publics. We've had some measured success with that, and I'm proud to have been part of that. That's what gives me the right leadership to be your sheriff as we move into the next year. I ask for your support as you go to the polls, as you consider the candidates. This is a tough race for the office of sheriff here. I know one of my opponents is in the back of the room here. There are 4 people that have good resumes, but ask yourself the question, who has the right experience? Who has the right leadership? Who's been here in the county doing the job? I've been here. When you ask questions, please ensure that you ask the candidates, did they support a county police department? Where were they when the county tried to form a police department? Are they in favor of the sheriff as the primary law enforcement agency? And will they fight if someone tries to take that away from you? I will. I was here and I've done it once before. As far as the Second Amendment goes, I spent my graduate studies, or I completed my graduate studies this past year, which when Michelle had asked me to come in November, I was not able to do it. The meetings conflicted with my class schedule, and for that I apologize. But I spent the bulk of my graduate studies on violent crime and the effects of firearms control, gun control laws, and concealed carry on crime. Maryland has it all wrong. I am a member of the Maryland Sheriff's Association Executive Board, and we are very active with our delegation and the legislature in Annapolis. Being a sheriff is not just about being a law enforcement officer. We have a role not only with policing in the county, we have a role with the courts, and we have a role with corrections. But the sheriff also has a role with the legislature. The sheriff has a role in helping to advance laws and promote causes with our delegation, working hand in hand to make sure that goofy laws that target law-abiding citizens don't get passed. And as your next sheriff, I'll continue to work with the legislature to do just that. What I would like to see is some legislation in any of the number of states, Oregon, for example, Colorado, Washington State, Montana. There's many, many states that have shall carry laws and programs. The issuance of concealed carry permits, it needs to be taken away from the state. That $2.5 million that was given to the state police to start the Maryland Firearms Safety Act, that needs to be turned over to local governments. The local sheriff and the local law enforcement. Thank you. The local sheriff and the local prosecutor know better who should not be in possession of a firearm, which Maryland laws are very clear. A habitual drunkard, a felon, these are people that should not be in possession of a firearm. And there's nobody better positioned. We don't need a centralized database. We don't need cameras. The local law enforcement and the local prosecutor are best positioned to know. And that's where it should be returned to. Maryland has it wrong when it comes to gun control. And I will work as your sheriff to have that changed. And I believe that we can convince the folks in Annapolis that Maryland has it wrong and that there is a better way. The unfortunate thing that, I think I'm hung up in the wire.
It's a little clingy tonight.
The unfortunate thing is that most folks don't understand that when gun control laws were initially enacted, it was to keep firearms out of the hands of African Americans and minority workers.
Yeah.
That's what they were designed for. And some of the very people that have gone off to war, fought for this country, and I'd use Baltimore City as an example, they're watching their neighborhoods decay around them. And these are honorable people that should be permitted to carry concealed, carry a firearm. They are the stakeholders in their neighborhood, and they know best who should be there, who should not, and they can have the greatest impact on public safety and quality of life. But we don't allow them to carry concealed. The new firearms laws that they've put into place require them to go to a range. I don't know of any ranges in Baltimore City. But they've gone off to war, they've put their life on the line, and they've fought for our freedom. And we will not allow them the very freedoms that they fought for to protect us. Government cannot solve all your problems, and nor can the sheriff's office. The important thing is, a sheriff working for you will empower you, will represent you, and make sure that you have the tools, the resources, and the information that you need to protect yourself. Are there things we can do to improve? Absolutely. There's always room for improvement. As your sheriff, I will continue to improve our office. And I'll work very, very hard to do that. I hope to have your vote. I think I've probably gone over my time limit.
You can start, you can ask for questions.
I'll take whatever questions you have. Yes, sir.
2 questions. What is your stance on the requirement to retreat and the castle doctrine?
Maryland and our state's attorney has promoted the castle doctrine for a number of years, and I think that people should not have to back down in their home or on their property. You have an absolute right to defend your family and yourself and your property. Yes, sir.
A couple of questions, kind of personal in nature. As a licensed firearms dealer in the state of Maryland and Carroll County, when I first got my license, I had a real difficult time trying to determine who was the chief law enforcement officer in Carroll County. Either Ken Trigoni or the state police wanted to step up and take that responsibility. I submitted paperwork to both. Finally got my paperwork through after about 7 months, which extorted at any point. Now, under the so-called firearms safety control, the state has the opportunity or the responsibility to review my federal firearms documents. I'm getting conflicting reports from both the state and the federal government as to what records I need to keep. How, as the sheriff, would you go about correcting that and making it more extreme or more streamlined so that as a dealer, I can do my job, make my living, and serve my customers?
You ask an excellent question, and this is why nullification alone is not going to fix the problem that we have. Why I support the lawsuit against the Maryland Firearms Safety Act, and why I support the bill that has been submitted this year to completely undo the act. These are things that the state of Maryland was not prepared to answer when they implemented this law. And we have been equally confused because we've been put in, we're given the responsibility of doing the fingerprinting for the new handgun licensing. We had on the first day, we were still trying to get procedures from the state on how to implement that, what processes we need to follow. From the federal side, the sheriff is the chief law enforcement officer. The federal government still views the sheriff as the chief law enforcement officer. The Maryland Firearms Safety Act, and this is something that we've still gone back and forth with in Carroll, on the state-related things, the Maryland State Police are still signing off on that paperwork. And it's confusing and it's labor-intensive. The firearms checks from the individual level, it needs to stay with the dealers. It needs to stay with the dealers. We've done it with rifles, we've done it with shotguns. It needs to stay there. The build out of the NICS system, absent a database, is the way to go. It needs to be done that way, and finishing that is very important. But again, from a local standpoint, control for that, it needs to be turned over to the locals. It's working very well across the country. Very, very well. And when you look, the places that allow concealed carry, with one exception, it's the state of Arizona, they've not had the mass shootings that you're seeing going on up and down the East Coast and in a couple of other places. Yes, sir.
Hundreds of thousands of applications we've had in the last year and a half for applications to purchase firearms. Up until October 1st, we had less than 1% of firearms delivered to people that shouldn't have happened. Why is the state making such a big push to make us wait until all paperwork's clear?
I can't answer that question.
How would you as sheriff support us firearms dealers to get out of this nonsense?
What we're doing at this point, again, I am supporting the bill that's been put forth this year to undo the act. The second thing, the lawsuit has to go. It has to be challenged. I know many of you are probably familiar with Sheriff Mack and the suit that he and several of the other sheriffs out west filed back in the 90s. There's been several others like it. That is the only way that we're going to undo those laws. The second piece, and I've listened to delegate or the candidate for the delegate seat down south, Bochat speak, is talking about realigning the way that our legislature is set up so that the Senate is not picked by population like what we're doing with the House side. It's not supposed to be done that way. I know that those aren't quick and simple solutions for you, but like you, we need to continue to work at the grassroots level to change the way that Maryland does business. And that is a good example of that. When you look at gun control, when you look at what's been done historically since the 1980s, it is to everything that they can put in the way to frustrate you, to get you to not want to own a gun, to not buy a gun, to make it costly for you. That's what they're trying to do. I had a very good friend, Ridgely Parks. He owned a gun shop in the town of Hampstead, right up through the end or the start of the new millennium. It got so complicated for him, so much paperwork, so much to do, so many delays. He and his wife retired, and they moved, and he closed up shop.
I have several friends in the business that are getting out of it because paperwork it's all we're doing is paperwork.
Okay.
We cannot service our customers. All we're doing is paperwork.
Well, I think what this group is doing is very well, and I know you're not naive. I can tell that you've educated yourself. Selecting delegates that are willing to go to Annapolis, work with the sheriffs, and work with the gun owners here in Maryland to overturn some of this labor-intensive processes and lengthy processes is very important. Yes, Bob?
As a chief law enforcement officer, if you were elected, you will take an oath.
That is correct.
You took the same oath that I took in the service.
The same oath that I took as a deputy sheriff.
Correct. Now, in the Army, I'm taking that oath. If I'm given an illegal order, I have an obligation not to obey that order.
Absolutely.
Now, on the same token, I take this oath seriously to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America and that of Maryland. How then, in good conscience, could you possibly enforce an unconstitutional law?
I'm not aware of an unconstitutional law I've enforced.
Well, how about 281?
He's talking about, he's supporting repealing the 281.
I know you are, but in terms of, you can't repeal it because the legislature won't. All right, at that point, we talked about Sheriff Mack, and he'll be coming here this Saturday. We'll hear from him again. But if you steadfastly refuse to enforce an unconstitutional law that is on the books, then you upheld your oath.
And I think I know where you're going with that, Bob.
You bet. In any portion that you enforce, you have broken your oath. Now, I've held a permit since 1978. Due to the Bullard case, they sent my application for renewal back with my check. They now told me I had to file the complete thing again. Would you believe they turned me down? They said that I don't carry enough money to qualify. I'm in the towing business. I'm out 24 hours. I go to lovely places like Reisterstown Plaza, downtown Baltimore. Do you think I probably ought to have one? Would you go down there without yours?
And certainly under the system that I think we should have, you would be carrying yours, Bob. And I think that you're probably misunderstood. Excuse me, just let me finish. I think you misunderstood. The pieces of the act that the sheriff is not responsible for under the law, particularly as it relates to the firearms dealers and the question that we had there, I would have there's no ability for our office to be involved with that.
All right, I'm traveling from Pennsylvania. I own property. And I bring down one of my target rifles. I have stuff that I shoot at Camp Perry competitive. Now, under the new law, this stuff's strictly illegal. And I will buy a new one from time to time, because I wear them out. Now, if I'm transporting that rifle down here to tune in at the range, take it back to Pennsylvania, I wreck a car. Now, am I going to be arrested for heavy contraband?
I wouldn't see why you would, Bob. I'm not sure what you're trying to ask me.
Okay, I bought a new rifle. I bought it in Pennsylvania. I'm dual resident. I have residency in both places. But according to that law, I brought the gun into the state. Now, I'm not going to register it here because I have it up there. That's at the camp. But I'm going to bring it in here to shoot. Now, under that law, technically I'm in violation of 281. Let's say I wrecked the car and you
But as a Pennsylvania resident, you're not.
But I am both. I am Maryland and Virginia.
But as a Pennsylvania resident, you're not. Again, it's the spirit of the law, Bob, not the letter of the law.
All right.
You get arrested at the Maryland Transportation. Police came after you, Bob.
Correct.
I have a question. I see a lot of our sheriff's cars have those blessed tag readers on them.
How do you justify that?
Take them away. Make them go away. That is like, that is totally.
NSA-ish.
Yeah, it's big time. Illegal search and seizure. And you're using technology to look at something that you should be using your own eyes to look at.
Absolutely. And in the leanest county, our people can't be everywhere. And I will tell you that we take every effort and make every effort to make sure that the information that's in there is secure, that it is not accessed by anyone that it shouldn't be accessed by. And I'll give you a success story. We're about to close the only open robbery that we had last year, and it was based, or the bulk of that case will be based out of information that came out of one of those tag readers. We were able to confirm that an individual was in the area of the location that was robbed. We have that vehicle based on the information that came back from that tag reader, because what we're doing with those, when we get a serious crime, we try to put those in the area so that we can figure out who was in the area at the time that that crime occurred. Can good people do bad things with technology? Absolutely. And that's why it's important that you elect the right sheriff and that you have someone that will do the right thing and not infringe on their people's rights. Technology should be a slave and not our master. And I will continue to make sure that we do that. Yes, Bob?
One more. I pulled over one of my antique cars, saw an historic N-class tag.
You have quite a collection, too.
I got a whole bunch of them. Some here, some in PA. There's more coming.
You make Chris look a lot better in the parades than I do when you bring all them out.
He asked me. I brought them. And a lot more. Here's the point. If you saw one of my antique tags and one of your tag readers said that my tag was suspended for emissions, what would you think of that? Historic tag.
If I'm operating a tag reader, we have a problem. But our folks that are operating the tag readers, we have 2 people that do that. And again, that's our...
How would you know if you saw an historic tag?
I wouldn't know anything. I don't look at it.
No, but you would know that it is not subjected to emissions, right?
Yes, our folks that operate...
Would you believe that I got a ticket on one of my vehicles because of a tag reader that said my tag was suspended for a vehicle emissions violation? On a 1949 DeSoto, folks.
From one of our people, Bob?
No, it wasn't yours this
Okay.
time.
Okay.
But it was a tag reader here in Westminster. Now,
Okay.
would common sense tell you at that point that there's some sort of a problem with motor vehicles? Yet, I still had to tow my car.
And I can tell you, the emissions we've had a significant problem with over the years. And many of you may know that if you don't take the emissions test, your registration will be suspended. And one of the things that we implemented probably about 8-9 years ago, because we had 1 or 2 people that got a citation or lost their plates over those, is we don't pull tags and we don't cite without a physical phone call that's done by the dispatcher. So if that gives you any consolation, I'm glad to hear that it wasn't us that wrote the citation.
Not this one. But I did have one of your folks give me a warning not having a seatbelt on one hand.
Nullification.
Well, there isn't any seatbelt.
Yeah, not in the 32, right?
Well, after they get the cords taken off the blinds, maybe they'll ask you to put seatbelts in the storage. Are there any other questions?
What's your position on gun-free zones?
I'm sorry?
What's your position on gun-free zones?
I think that it was crazy, and they made some changes under this law to try and make the police happy by allowing law enforcement officers that were off duty to go into schools with the firearms. I think when you put up a sign or you have an area and you tell people that it's a gun-free zone, you just open yourself up to be a victim. You know, it's when you disarm a law-abiding citizen, you make them an easy target. No, I don't believe that gun-free zones work.
There was somebody else.
Yes, ma'am.
What is your view of legalizing marijuana?
I think it's crazy.
What was her question?
I'm sorry. Her question was, what is your view on legalizing marijuana? We have a significant problem with drug abuse and have over the years. It's in every county. It's across the state, and we've been spending taxpayer money to teach kids not to smoke, and now we're going to tell them it's okay to smoke marijuana. It just sends the wrong message. It's been proven that it's a gateway onto other things, and I'll only point out that you know, even if you support that the government shouldn't be involved in telling you that, you simply have to look at what's going on right now in Wyoming and Washington State. Wyoming is having an issue with stoned drivers coming back from Colorado, and there's been a significant increase in car accidents. Washington State, the state, like they've done here in Maryland, they've talked about all the great revenue that it will generate and how it will be good for the economy. The state has kept the revenue and passed the work along to local government to regulate and to deal with the community and quality of life and crime issues that are going along with that. So I don't support it, no. Yes?
What do you think about the legalization of medical cannabis versus legal smokable marijuana?
I think the jury is still out on it, particularly in Maryland. The research needs to conclude. But in my lifetime, I've never taken any medicine that I had to smoke.
You don't have to smoke it, you can put it.
Right. Yes, sir.
I'm involved with the jailhouse ministries over there, and I know abuse problems is terrible over there. In fact, I think Jerry Barnes talked about that last week. What would you do as sheriff to tend to this? Because what percentage of those people who are in the detention center now related to some type of drugs, mainly pharmaceuticals? Everybody thinks it's street drugs, and most of them are pharmaceuticals.
Oh, you're absolutely right. About 80% of our offenders at any given time, give or take a couple percentage points, that are under the roof, and we had 241 this morning, I believe. They're there with some type, they're either there on a substance abuse violation or a petty crime committed to support a substance abuse habit or while they were under the influence of a substance. 20 or so percent, give or take a couple at any given time, are alcohol. These, for the most part, are, or a large portion of them, they're your kids. They're law-abiding citizens. Many of them have good jobs, good careers, leads to them breaking the law in other ways, not only related to the substance abuse. We've done a couple of things. We have a tiered process inside that gives our folks a hand up and not just a hand out. By putting them to work inside the detention center, we work through. We have an inside trustee status and outside trustee status. And I'm sure that you're probably familiar with that with your work with Mr. Kimmel. Our folks do all of the maintenance work inside of our facility. They help out up at the courthouse. And then our outside folks work on the county compound, manicuring the bushes, working on the lawn, picking up trash. And then we have folks that we actually allow off the campus. They work at the landfill, the farm museum. They've supported the wine festival and a couple of other events throughout the county. It gets them out, puts them into a capacity where they're working and they're around people that are successful, they're in a routine that's successful, and maintaining that is key. We've also gone, we have about 175, 180 people that are on some type of pre-trial or community supervision. We've worked a little bit with GPS and doing some home detention, and at any given point we'll have a handful of people or so that are on that, attending some type of treatment program, but also being involved in work. It's very, very important that we do everything that we can to allow them to prepare themselves to re-enter as a productive member, as opposed to just doing the time and then putting them on the street. The White House faith-based programs was created under George W. Bush, and there's a significant amount of money that's sitting there to be used. Did a project when I was down at the National Academy for a small agency in North Carolina, and it offers great promise. We have a huge faith community in Carroll County that are willing to help out our folks and not cost the taxpayer a dime, but more importantly, allowing our offenders to hook up with somebody in the community that can help them as they re-enter is going to be very, very important. That is something that I would like to implement. The warden and I went the other day to the Motor Vehicle Administration to meet with some folks from South Dakota, where they implemented a continuous monitoring program for DUI offenders. They're using technology, but they're having great success, almost a 40-some% success rate in reducing recidivism of repeat alcohol offenders. Your DUIs, these are your folks that are over 3 offenses. Great success. The program is spread to Montana, to Wyoming, and offers great promise not only to keep the costs down, because when the offender is out working, not only are they successful and they're able to support their family, stay in their job, they don't have to turn to an illegitimate means to fund their needs. If they're successful, they can also pay their way. And it lessens the tax burden. So it's very important that we continue to do that. And those are just a couple of the innovative things that we're looking at. Bob, another question?
The last one I got. The federal government says that a cap and ball, Derringer revolver, whatever, is not a firearm. All right. Now, following that through, are you carrying a concealed firearm if you're carrying a cap and ball?
It's a good question.
I thought it was an excellent one. What would you do in a case like that?
Well, I think under Maryland law, they would probably, and again, it would depend on what your intent was, I think that might classify as what they would call a concealed deadly weapon, as opposed necessarily to a concealed firearm. And it would fall in with several of those other things like pepper spray, nunchucks, and throwing stars. I don't know if we would carry them.
Black belt. Am I not carrying a weapon at all times?
Absolutely.
Okay, so what's the problem?
It's a good argument, Bob.
All right.
Very good. Are there any other questions? I know I'm not going to satisfy Bob tonight. Again, folks, the sheriff race is going to be very, very important. It's going to be very, very important. There are several qualified candidates that are running for this race. I can tell you my entire career is here. I've been married for 21 years. I'll celebrate my 21-year wedding anniversary next month. I have 4 children. They're all here in public schools. I have a high schooler, a middle schooler, and 2 elementary schools. I've coached spring and fall sports for several years. I'm actively involved with 4-H. Grew up in Marriottsville, and I'm very proud to call Carroll County my home. Proud of the service I've had here as a local law enforcement officer, and it's been an honor and a privilege to serve you. And I ask for your support and your vote, and that you allow me to continue to serve you as your sheriff after your vote in the June 24th primary and then the general election in November. Thank you all very much.
You did well. I timed that well, didn't I? You did. Did you have
All right, everybody, let's give one round of applause for all the candidates here this evening, including Chris Fiora and Josh Stonko. Okay. Okay, next meeting. We will have